Hi, greetings. Jessica Gilmore here. This is my lesson makeover or redesign. First and foremost, I would like to say I am a full out ELA teacher. ELA and social studies has been my content area since I have started teaching, which was 7 years ago. I have a background in journalism, so this has kind of been interesting and kind of fun to me because I've been deep diving into science, focus standards, and the curriculum, which I am not so um I don't have much knowledge on it. I'm not too um keen to it, but I have been having fun with it since I've started. I must say, whatever content area you are working in, all teachers often need to take the original lessons that we are giving from the curriculum and redesign them to better meet the diverse needs of our students with and make sure it's aligned with the current standards because we do know that standards do change um throughout the years. Many pre-made lessons often focus on learning or surface level content without providing opportunities for inquiry, for critical thinking, or real world application. So, when these companies create the different lessons, they don't really think about students in different areas. So, by modifying our lessons, annotating them, modifying them, we can create more engaging, hands-on experiences that deepen our understanding and for our students' understanding and even our understanding too. Because when we're going into these lessons, we have to reteach it to ourselves before we teach it to our kids. Um, and it also promotes ownership, student ownership for the lesson for their learning and support all learners, including our language learners, our students with disabilities, or aka our SPED students, our students with those superpowers, um, and also our advanced learners who need that extra challenge. So, well designed lessons ensure alignment with the state standards, integrate meaningful assessments, and foster 21st century skills like collaboration and scientific reasoning. So, the lesson that I chose to recreate is a lesson on weather. I went through a couple of the elementary units for several grade bands, and I noticed that weather is something that they do discuss in some of the grade bands. So I chose to do a lesson on weather. Um, it's grade level 4, weather and water cycle. The lesson title is Parts of the Weather and Weather Tools. The duration of the original lesson was one class period, which is 40 minutes. The objective is students will be able to identify different types of weather and name tools used to measure them. Flat out. The materials used for that lesson was weather vocabulary worksheet, um, a printed a printed diagram of weather tools, and then teacher lecture notes and a pencil and crayons. So it was very simple. It was very simple. Um, that is what the lesson that was the opening for the lesson basically, and then the instructional activities were as followed. Direct instructions, 15 minutes, teacher lectures using a chart of weather tools, um, worksheets. The students will work on the worksheets for 15 minutes, and then a weather vocabulary coloring page for 10 minutes. So this is what the lesson plan consisted of before the lesson was redesigned. And the assessment was to complete the completion of the worksheet and informal observation during the class discussion. So that was the lesson. Now I took this lesson and I transformed it into a redesign for a 2 day inquiry based upon the unit, with hands-on stations, real and simulated data collection, a CER writing test. Now, coming from an ELA teacher, CER is one of my favorite strategies. I put it mostly with social studies because I don't teach science, but I do know that this strategy is very good for social studies and science. So I definitely added in a CER writing task, visual modeling and graphing, and then standards aligned assessment within rubric. Because coming from an ELA teacher across the board, if I'm teaching science for a semester or a school year, I would still put in ELA, not ELA standards, but ELA skills, meaning I'm still going to push writing in science. Even if I taught math, I would still push writing, because when they go to take those tests, best practices, writing is something that is very important across the board, because they want to see the students' explanations. They want to see that the students actually know what they're talking about, and they get that through writing. So I did put a CER assessment in, and my lesson is originally 2 days, but if I could, I would add that third day would be the writing assessment. If I can pull it and push it in the second day, I would, but most likely if I'm doing 2 days of learning, I would do the assessment the third day. So they'll have it'll basically be a 3-day lesson. Well, a 3-day, basically a 3-day lesson, or a 3-day activity. I added an ICANN statement because I'm not sure how other districts operate, but the districts that I have worked in, it's always been a requirement that we have an ICANN statement, opposed to just a plain flat out SWABED. Is what they called it when I was in school. They would call it a SWABED, which is students will be able to. We have to add ICANN statements. So the ICANN statement is I can collect and use weather data to identify patterns and explain how the sun affects weather conditions on Earth. That will be the ICANN statement. Now, the learning objective is by the end of the lesson, students will be able to identify patterns in weather over time, describe how sunlight, air, and water interact to create weather, analyze weather to make predictions about local weather conditions. And then these standards are ESS 2-1. I'm assuming they're going to put an L in front of the ESS. But make observations and collect data to provide evidence that weather conditions change over time. And then LESS 2, which is analyze and interpret data from maps to describe patterns on Earth's features. And then I have analyzing and interpreting data, that's SEP.4, and then CCC.1 patterns, observe patterns of form and events, guide organization and classification. Now, these are all Louisiana standards. I'm having a hard time reading them because I'm used to the RL and 5.2, and then it's just flat out. Science is a little different, so please bear with me with that. But my first day, my instructional steps will be: what is weather? Students will engage in a lesson. I'll ask questions. My bell ringer may start off with what is weather like today? How do we know? They answer that question, and then we actually engage and elaborate in that when the lesson starts. So that will probably be my bell ringer. I'll go into an introduction to the end of the lesson, CER, which I'll explain what the students will have to do for the writing assessment. I'll explain that will be a summative grade because they will be writing basically a culminating writing test for the end of the lesson. I will probably introduce them to their unit focus question as well, the phenomenon question, because that's something that they will see in every lesson is a build upon. or that very moment when they have to complete that question. So I'll probably introduce them to that as well. Right after I introduce the actual objectives, I'll get to the focus question, what they're expected to do at the end of the lessons. And I probably will make that actual writing task maybe their exit ticket as well, to push my small grouping. So then students will have weather station rotations. So I'll create little stations where students rotate through simple hands-on stations. They'll have they'll be able to measure temperatures. They'll have pinwheel where they can observe wind direction, clear cup and ice in warm water, to see condensation, which is a humidity demo. That will be some of the stations that I would have set up. My materials for those stations would also be put out or explained to students as well. And I probably would explain to them what those materials are. But basically, I'll have in a lesson that they're engaging in. I've learned that when you have high engagement levels, your students are learning, they're having fun, they're actually happy to be at school and happy to learn, because they have lessons where they're actually engaging. So the first day we'll basically do the rotation stations, and then the second day we would do graphing activities where they'll use sample weather data, real or provided, from a local city. And the students will create line graphs showing temperature changes over the week. Okay, and then I would probably ask students, what patterns do they notice? Can we predict tomorrow's weather? And then we'll evaluate with the 20-minute CER task, written or oral. Sometimes I like to give my students with the superpowers, my SPED students, oral tasks, because I have some students that have issues with writing. They don't really like to write, or they handwriting is a big issue with them where we can't really understand. So I'll let them do a oral presentation where they just come to me and they'll just explain or analyze and break that question down to me. So I basically added a lot of creating, analyzing, observing, and assessment to the lesson, which the lesson originally had nothing besides a coloring sheet. So I tried to add a little bit of fun to it. Also, with the first day, we doing the rotating centers, me explaining, allowing the kids to explore after I explain what the weather is and what the different tools are and how we can basically determine our predictions and all of those different things. The next day will be them graphing, so that will be more so student-led. After it's explained and modeled to them, they'll do that on their own, so they'll be more independent. I probably will have them grouped in either 4 to a group where I have 2 higher students and 2 low students. I love to do that. If it's not 4, it's always 2, but it's always AB partners. So I'll have a student that scored really high paired with a student that maybe in the middle or scored really low. And I find that students learn more and better from their peers sometimes. So I love to have those AB partner buddies. So again, they will have an assessment question with a rubric, and the assessment question would be, how does the sun affect weather patterns on Earth? Write an explanatory essay that explains how the sun, water, and air interact to create weather. Use information from your experiment, class discussion, and data analysis to support your explanation. Include examples of weather tools and patterns you observed or learned about. So that basically will be my lesson redesign. I am going to upload a copy of everything typed out. It's not on your lesson plan template that you gave, but I just wanted to give a typed out visual, because some people are visual learners. So yes, I am explaining. This is audio, but I have it typed out so that you can read it, just in case you want to read it. But at any rate, that's my lesson redesign. I know I went over 4 minutes. I tend to ramble, but yes, that's what I have. So basically, communicate the objective, communicate the end of the unit, focus, communicate the standards, materials, go into what exactly we're doing. So we have a full-on class discussion. After that discussion, model the actual assessment with them, allow them to do rotating stations so they can do hands-on experiments. The next day, come in, they're doing our model of graphing. They start to graph, and then they do a CER utilizing a prompt that was given. Okay, so that is my lesson redesign.